Sure.
Yeah.
No, he's done it. He's been doing it. Yeah. He's in the last 3 or 4 years. Yeah, that sounds about right. But that's probably the path. Yeah, that's the path. That's the path. That's the change. He's still involved. Shana. Yeah. Shana. Those 2 games. Through the artwork. We're good? Okay. You gonna move in a little bit? You're gonna Rabbi wants to make sure that's good. Thank you. Mike is on.
I want to thank the Parnes HaShana. This is Moshe and Amy Siedebam, L'ilui Nishmas, Moshe's father, Rabbi Yisrael, Ben Chaim Shlomo, Neshama Gdalya, Neshama Simcha Nachas and Bracha, Neshama Mishpach, L'ilui Nishmas, Rabbi Gdalya, Ben Rabbi Shimon, Neshama Gdalya, Simcha Nachas and Bracha. We're in Ayekah on page Samach Tes. Chofesh Eino Erech Muklim. So in order to answer the question that Hashem asked of Adam and Chava and Gan Eden Mikedem, and is asking each and every one of us all the time, whether we hear it or we don't hear it, we're being asked the question, Ayekah, we have to answer the question, that's what we're learning about now, of Mahu HaChofesh. What does it mean to be free? Mahu HaChofesh. Imkach Mahu HaChofesh. So what is Chofesh? HaChofesh hu hashlila shekol ma shemeshabed osan. The simple meaning of Chofesh is that a person is free from all that's meshabed him, all that is enslaving, constricting, containing. All that's in the way that's preventing a person from being who he is be'emes. Now, there are a lot of things that we want to do that are not who we are be'emes, do not reflect upon or do not reveal or are not a manifestation of who we are be'emes. Now, this is what happened in the Western world. As the world was trying to free itself from the shackles of the church and of tyrants and kings, dictators, so which is all very, very positive change in the world. But Chofesh, freedom, was seen as an independent ideal. Chofesh, to be free. So it began as freedom from the king, the monarch, or the church, would evolve or disintegrate into a perverted and abused version or definition of what Chofesh is. Kilu is something which has its own independent mitzias. HaChofesh eino toichen she'omer b'fnei atzmo, erech nechshak hanitzav levado. This erech nechshak hanitzav levado, that to be free is something that it's this gewaldige ideal, and that it has its own independent mitzias. Elo emtzoi, Chofesh is not the freedom, is not the tachlis. Freedom is only an emtzoi. It's only that which enables and helps a person to reach the tachlis. We see now we see now in America and in other places all over the world, what happens when freedom itself becomes the ideal. That's what we're watching now, the destruction of civilization. Freedom is not the tachlis, it's not the goal, it's not the ideal. Hello, I'm sorry, it's only a means to the end. The tachlis is not chofesh, it has the same letters, but chipus. Chipus means searching for oneself. I remember there was a thing going around last Pesach, 2 Pesachim ago, I don't remember, where there's somebody setting out this little cartoon of a yid that he's going and searching for chametz, which is the chipus, right? He's looking for chametz, and he finds a piece of. He was standing with the candle in the dark, and he finds a piece of bread, and the bread has a little head on it and a face, and the bread says, "I identify as matzah." That's what has happened. In the search for freedom as the ideal, not as freedom as a means to getting to the ideal. There, the cartoon is telling us about the loss of identity, not finding one's identity, but losing one's identity. That's what's happened. Losing the loss of identity, and all gender, the loss of identity. That happens when chofesh replaces chipus. When freedom becomes the goal and not searching and not looking. The freedom is just an emtsoi, it's just a means to get to the tachlis. Shenor lahavio sanula tachlis amitis, which is lios mishanach, is to have an accurate and correct identification of the self. That's the tachlis of freedom. To be free to find yourself, to look for yourself and to find yourself. Lias mishanachna, the mamesh is a zehus ha'atzmis, to actualize one's own identity. That's for the individual and for people as well, for a nation as well. Ha'atzmis amiti shalom. Mikan novin es a chashivus ha'gedolah sheyesh l'musag ha'gvul davke. And with this we could understand the great importance of the whole musag of a gvul. That we saw in the last Shabbos, we saw in the parasha, by Parnes HaShana, we saw that there was a t'nai, there was a condition for us to receive the Torah. Where it says in the Torah by Parnes HaShana, v'higbalta es ha'am saviv leimar, that there was a gvul that was made around the mountain, and Moshe Weinberger told, "Am Yisrael yishomu lechem alois bahar ungoy v'getzayu." Be careful not to go up the mountain, not even to touch the edge of the mountain. Kol hanageh bahar ma'aseh yumas. Whoever does that is going to die. So those days of Hagbolah that preceded Kabbalah Satorah are a t'nai. It's a condition today as well. In order for a person to receive the truth and to live a life that's true and to hear the Dvar Hashem, instead of listening to his own taivas, but to hear what Hashem has to say, there must be boundaries and borders. There must be a gvul. Tafkida shel hagvul, the tafkid, the purpose of the gvul, is letachem es adam. From the word chum. Again, to create a tchum of finding oneself. To be able to circle, to highlight, and to see oneself, to create a tchum around oneself. And when a person does that, he's able to focus. The maked means to focus. all of his efforts in those areas of his life that will bear fruit. To be able to stay focused on those areas of life, that if he concentrates and is focused on who he is and what he can do, then he will he'll live a productive life. Afikim shemoitziim ela poel es ha'ishiyus hamiuchedes shelo, and he will be busy working on those things in life that will draw out and actualize his true self, who he really is. In b'shem hachofesh adam yispazer la'asos ma shebolo. If for the sake of freedom, or in the name of this ideal of freedom, a person's mispazer, a person breaks himself, fragments himself into different pieces. La'asos ma shebolo. He wants, in order to be free, to do mashabalo. Mashabalo means what I want to do. I'm free. When we were children in school, one of those common things that I said is that America is a free country. So you could punch a kid in the face, or you could take his Nestle's Crunch bar or something, or his potato chips, and because there was a guy in our class that used to do that, and it would be followed by America is a free country. Lasus mashabalo. Mashabalo. Ubachlal ze gam es masha menugad letivo atzmi. Now mashabalacha, that which you feel like doing, is oftentimes completely against the nature of who you really are. Mashabalacha. It's against the teva atzmi. This happens all the time, especially when kids are growing up and you're with friends. And there's oftentimes in that clique, in that group of friends, there's the leader, and there's a certain chashivas that they give this leader, and even without realizing it, you're not acting as yourself. You're not behaving as yourself, and you're just swept along with the clique or the leader of that chevra, and you're not being yourself, and you think that you're doing mashabalacha, what you want, but that's not really what you want. You didn't want to behave that way. You only did that because that's what the chevra was doing. That's what the Reish was doing. Hadavi yisavilo sevel rav, and ultimately this causes tremendous pain, deep internal pain to a person, even though you don't know where it's coming from. Generally, one can assume that when you're feeling depressed for no understandable reason, you can always find a reason. You just think about who the president is of America, or the vice president, or whatever. Or you could think of what's going on in Eretz Yisrael. There are always reasons for being depressed within one's own dalaramas and beyond one's dalaramas. But the vast majority of the time is because you've drifted far away from yourself. That's where you feel dislocated. And when you can't explain, you have to try to find some reason to explain why is you not in a great mood, or why is it that you're not yourself, or you're not being yourself. You're not yourself. And that causes selva. That causes it's the cave, it's the suffering of the world. So everybody thought that democracy was going to bring to tremendous happiness, the pursuit of happiness. But the founding fathers of America were smart people, and they also understood that the point of democracy was only to give the person the freedom to pursue happiness. They never meant that freedom is itself happiness, but it only allows you to pursue happiness. And that's of course that's the truth. Otherwise, you could be the most democratic place in the world, and you could have the highest rate of depression and anxiety and misery. You're free. Lo chofesh yova bakach. So in the end, this person did not find freedom. Ela shibud umachayvim. In the end, he found shibud. He found kisikne eved evi. He found shibudim. He found slavery. The tzaddikim that are called avodim, Moshe Avdi, David Avdi. The tzaddikim say that David HaMelech is an Eved Ivri. And the meaning of an Eved Ivri is, which is the beginning of the parasha, Kisikne Eved Ivri, is that even if a person is over an Aveira, which David HaMelech and his Madrega had certain struggles and challenges in his life, he remained an Eved Hashem. So even though he was over, he was Eved Ivri. He didn't leave. He didn't run away from being an Eved Hashem. Because he believed that his essence was an Eved Hashem. So even though he was over on his Madrega, David HaMelech did certain things. This is you look in the Beis Avram from Slonim, he talks about this. Other tzaddikim speak about this. The Indian of David HaMelech being an Eved Ivri. And then he was able to teach that to the entire world, that even though sometimes you make mistakes, don't become enslaved to them. That's Avodah La'olam. Avodah La'olam means that David HaMelech taught the entire world that even though you're over, you could still continue on being an Eved Hashem. But that's only if you're a person that's searching for the truth, for the pneumius, for the emes. Shviras gevulos shemekuvanus lahavias adam lios misha eino davar chiyuvi klal. The breaking down of borders that were placed, that are there, in order to bring a person to who he has to be, breaking down those borders in order to be able to do things that you feel like doing or wanting to do, it's not something which is positive at all. This is not the path that leads to happiness. We could use a triangle to sort of as a diagram to make this clearer. The point of the triangle is the atzmis, is oneself, is the self. As a hus amiti shalano, one's true identity. And the two sides of the triangle. So the two sides of the triangle are the different tnuos of life that are to bring a person, to bring us to Mishon Achnu Bemes. Hatnu achas yachayfish. One side of the triangle, one tnua, is chofesh, freedom. That is coming to remove anything that stands in the way of a person coming to that, the kudah of himself. Anything in life, chofesh, to remove any of the obstacles to finding oneself. And the second side of the triangle, and the second side of the triangle, which is not less choshev than chofesh, is zu hagdaras hagvulos, the boundaries of life, the borders of life. So there needs to be chofesh, that chipus for the self. That's one side of the triangle that leads to the atzmius, to the self, and the other side are the tchumim, the boundaries. The mitzvahs asay, the mitzvahs lo asay, all the deraises, all the drabanans, derech eretz, v'chulei. There are no people on earth who have as many gvulas as Am Yisrael. But from the moment that we're in the world, we have gevulas. The moment we come to the world, the moment we wake up in the morning, we have gevulas. To try not to walk more than Talat Amos without washing negel vasa. There are gevulas from the moment that the Jew wakes up. And from the moment we come to the world, I was always marked to my children, with the grandchildren as well, that when the baby, Baruch Hashem, when the baby is born, the first thing that they should do is to wash negel vasa. So to have hakpad, we see from the tzaddikim at hakpad, you should try to take the baby and to wash negel vasa. From the moment that the child enters into this world, he should be with the gevulim. There are tchumim in this world. But a Jew doesn't move forward in life without washing negel vasa. And all that negel vasa means. All that it means to wash one's hands. So of course, nurses and doctors would see that as something which is totally bizarre. And there might be other people, even from people who would say that's very odd. You're saying that a 1 minute old infant is chayiv, a 30-second old infant is chayiv in negel vasa. I mean, my children know, because when we get the news about Baruch Hashem about a baby, I say, I call it Mazel, we're coming. And they say right away, don't worry, we wash negel vasa, the baby's okay. Because they know that, and make sure they don't give the baby anything that's not chal v'yisrael, don't let anybody touch the baby. From the moment that we come into the world, the moment we step into the world, it's gevulas, tchumim, and the world doesn't understand this. So our enemies from the side of Esav and the church fathers in those years when Christianity, the Avodah Zarah of Christianity was trying to find itself. So the main difference they saw between them and us is that Judaism is a religion of a restrictive God of judgment and so on. All of the laws, and the first thing that they tried to do was to remove all of the restrictions, to remove halacha. That began with the one the Shaul, who they called Paul, his name was Shaul from Tarshish, to remove the boundaries, to remove the restrictions, so you could be free to worship God in the way that you like. So then a piece of chametz can identify as a piece of matzah, and the murderer can identify himself as a compassionate person. And it just keeps on going. There's no end to what happens, to where that goes. So this is the triangle. Hagvul shamagdir mawa teva shali. The gvul, the purpose of the boundary, is to create a tchum that helps you to identify who you are, to be able to find and to be able to understand your teva. And what is it that I need to be faithful to? What do I need to cling to hold on to, in order to remain alive as myself, to live as myself? Rak b'schus hagvul hazeh, and only in the schus of that gvul, of the border, of the boundary, is it possible to find one's atzmius and to draw out that atzmius? There's nothing negative about the gvul. Again, as we discussed last week, the childish, immature way of looking at the restrictions of life, the restrictions, the silly way of looking at it is something which is terrible, something which is negative. The same way that a person who's on a tiyul, he's taking a nice little hike or a trip, and there's a fenced off area with a sign that says restricted area because they're doing like nuclear tests over there, and the guy's all annoyed, he's upset, and he takes down the sign and jumps over the fence because he doesn't want to he feels that this is something which is very, very restricting. something that's very negative, this restricted area, not to go there. He wants to go wherever he wants to go. But of course, being in that place is endangering his life. It's losing his life. And that's how it is every time that, chas v'shalom, we're not careful with where we go. When you're not careful washing negavasa, chalil, or when you're not careful with Shabbos, you're not careful with all of the gvulim that Hashem has given us in order to be able to stay away from the restricted area and to be able to cultivate the area of life that is life-giving. There's nothing negative about the gvul. It's very immature to see the gvulim like that. That's how children look at every gvul. A child looks at every gvul. I can't play the game for another 5 minutes. It's terrible. And the parents are saying, we want you to be a normal person. So you had enough of this already today with this playing with the game. We want you to be a normal person. But the child doesn't understand. Well, the child is upset. The child's upset because mommy and daddy said you can't play now. You have to come inside now. Whatever. The child's upset. I don't know if they still have that, asking children to come inside. Because now they're mostly just playing with their stupid things inside. When we were growing up, my mother had to bang on the window. We were playing outside, my mother banged on the window. Yeah. Dava nifla. The truth is that the boundaries, the gvulim is a dava nifla. Mamish, k'maya yitzil lecheres. Just the opposite of how a child perceives the gvulim. The gvulim and the tchumim of life is the yitzil lecheres. You can look at the halachas by Rav Nosson when he writes about by the tchumim, by the halachas of tchumim. It's all to be free. Dav nifla mamish k'maya yitzil lecheres. Masha oisa. Koile es ruach atzmi shalom. A mature person understands that these gvulim are davke freeing him from what's imprisoning him. Oyser is a prison, kola, like a base keller, a jail. That's oyser v'kola is a ruach ha'atzmi sheli, that it's imprisoning and holding back. The ruach ha'atzmi sheli, of my true ruach, of who I am, that's the purpose of the gvulim. It's the most obvious and simple thing in the world. You could be, forget about children, you could be sitting there and dragging around on your phone, even if it's something which is not bad. Stop dragging around looking at every report and all the different news things and all these things. You're going and looking, and you have to be up for minyan. You have to be at minyan. It's at 7 o'clock or at 6 o'clock, whatever it is. Or the person has to be at work. And you're sitting there and it's 2:30 in the morning and you're playing around looking at these different things. So you understand that any simple person, the simplest person in the world understands that as a result of your being free to fool around with your phone at 2:30 in the morning, you're not going to function properly, not by davening and not by work. And davening and work is what you really have to do. Not to look at a bunch of anti-Semites at 2 in the morning, or even if you want to see, Ben Shapiro or something like that, a nice Jew of the yarmulke. But it's 2:30 in the morning. So what's going to be with your davening tomorrow? America's a free country. I have nobody here telling me at 2:30 in the morning that I can't I can't watch this, or I can now with podcasts. You know what this thing is with podcasts? Any of you listen to podcasts or watch them? You know what's going on with this stuff? Every day I'm hearing about people that I remember from school that failed everything. We were in the same class and they have podcasts. I'm hearing about this guy has that guy has a podcast. He doesn't know how to spell podcast. And he's got a podcast. This is like the only person that's dumber than the guy that made the podcast is this guy that's listening to the podcast. This is the newest thing, and it's mislabish and all kinds of Torah and chashuv things. You sit there instead of having your head in a sefer, you're sitting there listening to these things. You put those little things in your ear, and you sit there listening to everything. And I don't mean anything against any of the people that are trying hard to make nice. I don't mean that, because I know there are wonderful, wonderful Jews that are making podcasts, and they're trying to help other people. And I don't mean chas v'shalom. That's something else that they want to teach and they want to help. That they're trying to do a good thing. I'm not talking about that. And there are many people who are gaining and benefiting from listening to, not the guy from my class, but listening to these good people that are making chashuv podcasts. But again, what's the gvul? Did you make a boundary? You think the gvulim are only for your children? When they have to eat supper, when they have to go to bed, when they have to do their homework. But as an adult, you could sit there for hours and hours listening to things, listening to what other people have to say instead of listening to what you have to say. Listen to every single thing in the world, what's going on. And of course, it's also mislavish and ahavas Yisrael. Because of your great love for the Jewish people, you have to listen to every report. All of these things are chofesh that's gone wild. And instead of freeing you to be the person that you should be, you become imprisoned in certain habits. And that became a habit also, people listening to things, and watching things all the time. It became a habit. I'm not even talking about bad things, I'm talking about kosher things. I'm not talking about something else, God forbid. I'm talking about things that are kosher things. Kiddush ha'choifesh ke'erach she'omer b'fnei atzmo. This sanctification of chofesh, of freedom, as an independent ideal in life, hu mesukan ma'od, is very dangerous, very, very dangerous. As I said, it really lies at the heart of much of the depression of the modern world. Mesukan ma'od. The Pisgas Hasulam Psychelios Nitzeves Atzmius. The height of the ladder, the point of where a person is climbing to, of what's tachlis in life, is not chofesh. It's atzmius. It's the answer to the question of Ayekah. So you remember this. So the snake, the Nachash sold Adam and Chava again. It's a very big Indian. It's not simple, of course. It's one of the hardest things in all of Torah. But the Nachash sold this thing of V'yisum Kelokim Yodei Tov, that you'll be like God, who knows Tov and Ra. That was whatever that means. I'm not going into it now, but that's what the Nachash sold Adam and Chava. And Adam and Chava listened to this voice, like we learned from Avkok, listened to this voice outside of themselves. They were never created to be Ke'elokim. They were created b'tzelem Elokim, but not to be God, but to be godly. And the path towards man's being godly is what Hashem told Adam and Chava and Gan Eden, which is la'avdel l'shamra. La'avdel l'shamra. La'avdel l'shamra means to be an eved. Hashem. L'shamra, Mrs. Leisese. La'avdel l'shamra. But what happens is that Adam had this musag of v'yisem kelok. This the Nachash always sells a person. The message of the snake is to be something v'yisem ke, and then you fill it in. So for the little kid in school, it's v'yisem ke. Derek Jeter. I don't know if he's still. He must be past the age of playing baseball. He's retired. Hall of Fame, I hope.
Yeah.
Okay. So he was ready after I used to come by. I know I took Ushi to the games. He was a good ball player. So for a little boy growing up in those years in America, when I was growing up, it was V'yisem Ke, Mickey Mantle, or basketballs, Willis Street, V'yisem, or football, Joe Namath, whatever your man was, and you would put up pictures, and the snake was telling the little kid, V'yisem Ke, and this is you have your picture, V'yisem Ke, then you fill it in. So for Adam, it's a chashuv thing. Elokim is a chashuv thing. much bigger than much bigger than a ball player. There's a Visam Kelokim, but it's the same. It's the same Yetzer Hara. It's anything other than yourself. Doesn't make a difference. You want to say it's Kelokim. Yadi Tovera. That's not you. And you could have a bacher in yeshiva that he's a wonderful, beautiful bacher, and he tries to learn, and he does his best, and he has somebody that keeps on drilling into his head. V'yisem ke Moshe Weinstein, and he'll quote all kinds of things of different svarim. That if you wouldn't have such a big Yetzer Hara, you too could become like a Moshe Weinstein and have your picture on the wall with the Gdalya Yisrael. And the kid sets out on this journey of discovering somebody else. That's not him. And he's not going to find a Moshe Weinstein. Doesn't make a difference how many people tell him the stories, like, these stories like I mentioned a few weeks ago, that like the Nitziv woke up one morning and he was a big Talmud Chacham. That didn't happen that way. Or that, you hear stories about they didn't have such strong minds, but they were misgaber, and then every single kid in yeshiva thinks that he's going to be misgaber. Of course, everybody tries as hard as they can. You do your best. So, you just do your best. But if that kid is living a life of v'yisem ke, some other kid in the yeshiva, or like his brother. Well, when I was growing up, it was very, very common for a Rabbi to say, "You're not like your brother." I didn't have a brother; I had a sister. But there was a boy in my class that it was him and his brother, and the brother was like a tzaddik of a boy, and was a brilliant boy. And every single time this guy would hear from his teachers and his rebbeim, "You're his brother? No, you're nothing like your brother." In those days, they didn't have any rules about destroying people's lives. Now they have a lot of rules. So you have to go against the rules to destroy somebody's life. It's still being done. But in those years, it was just the Rabbi said whatever he wanted. It wasn't just the Rabbi, even the secular teachers. They would say, "Oh, they would go the first day of class, the guy's name. Oh, you're Goldstein? Your brother." So for that kid, it was v'yisem ke, like to be like my brother. And it didn't work out. It doesn't work out that way. This Goldstein, number 2, has got to find himself and what he could do and what he's good at. Not like his brother Goldstein. And this is the source of misery in the world from the time of Gan Eden, to listen to the snake, to listen to that voice outside of yourself. And then you begin to break down all the boundaries and the borders. That's what Adam Chava did. Mitzvah achas, they had one mitzvah, not even they said, as a shayim. One mitzvah. Right? We all think that I could have done that. I never would have eaten from the tree. Yeah, that's so hard. One mitzvah, Hashem says. And not only that, he didn't say it through a Navi. He didn't. Adam Chava didn't read it in a Sefer. The Baruch Shalom told them, "Don't eat from the Eitz Hadas." So we all think, what kind of a loser was Adam Arish? But this is a taiva to hear the snake. That need. That taiva, that Yetzer Hara. Because it says about the tree that it was taiva le'nayim, there was something desirable. Whatever that was, there was something about that was desirable. To go for that fruit that the snake said is going to make you happy. V'yisem kelokim. No, the tachlis of life is v'yisa kamocha. V'yisa, just v'hayisa, to be. For you to be yourself. Hazeyus aprimis, one's inner and true identity. Rak la'oire ev shalahag, the next page, ayin. Only when you know what that tachlis is, and you only when you know what that tachlis is, and you're moving towards that tachlis of identifying yourself. Is it possible then you can have an accurate hagdara of what chofesh, what freedom, what vulos, and the boundaries. I will embrace pyramid, but the problem is that if at the top of the pyramid, or the top of that triangle, the point of that triangle, you see there what I want. You see their freedom. And lo notziv es atzmius, and it's not atzmius. It's not the emes of who I am. My good things and my bad things, not my atzmius. Elas erech hachofesh. But the point of the top of the pyramid is this erech of chofesh, of freedom. Yochel lotzis mezeh heres golden oid. It can come terrible churban. A terrible churban comes from it. Dugma in b'shem erech hachofesh v'habricha megvulas adam yimona v'lechanech es b'nosh osel hazik. That's how you want your kid to. You don't want your kid to be restricted, so you don't teach them about not damaging other people's things. Not damaging. You don't want to restrict your kid. You don't want to take away his freedom. So you can do whatever he wants. So your kid goes around breaking things and destroying things. Because you say, my kid has certain kaiches, and I don't want to restrict his freedom. He has kaiches, so he's using his freedom to break windows and steal cars. So, listen, he's got to be free. Everybody understands this is a tremendous churban. Chayfesh is only a means to free a person to be able to get to the tachlis, which is atzmis amitis, and to be faithful, to allow a person to be faithful to his true atzmis. Rak mitach nekudas atzmis nitan lahagdim mi on. Only from that nekuda of atzmis can a person define who he is. It's the same thing with the Jewish people as a people, which now, because of the Milchama, that we see that there's much more of a clarity in terms of defining who we are, who the enemy is, and even Jews that it was very blurry until now. Many of them are feeling this on their own madreka. Many of them, they just weren't educated, but at least there's a certain hagdara that I'm a Jew. I call it pachas to be able to say I'm a Jew. And many people who have no shaykhs to anything of the Yiddishkeit are now saying, I'm a Jew. I'm a Jew. I define myself as a Jew. So that discovery of mi ani can come in many different ways. But mitoch nekudas atzmis nitan lahagdim mi adam. So it's not only for the individual, it's for the people as well. It's for the nation as well, for Am Yisrael as well, to be able to identify mi anachnu, who are we? Rak mitoch hagdara kazu nuchal lahagdi b'ofen nachon ima anachnu tzichim latzes l'chavshi, and then we're able to know which is the area that I have to. Now I am free to develop, to cultivate that self, and to be to be able to experience true freedom. And to appreciate and to recognize what are the healthy rulers. So remember, sometime in the 70s, maybe in the late 60s or 70s, was mentioned this concept that was imported from Stom and Amora. It was called an open marriage. I remember that term. They started to use that term, an open marriage, which means that even though we're married to each other, that doesn't prevent us from meeting other people. It's an open marriage. We have this understanding. It's called an open marriage. Because marriage began to be seen as what? A shibud. Marriage is a shibud. Because there's no bigger gvul that a regular person experiences than marriage. So we see that at the same time that this open marriage thing became popular, when did this all become popular? This all became popular at the same time. All of this was happening. That marriage itself became a very, very restrictive and terrible institution. So even among Jewish people that they don't. It's not so anxious to get married, because marriage became seen as something which is restricting and something which is enslaving, and the opposite of anything which allows me to be chofshi. But of course, the tachlis of marriage is dafke, that through that connection, a person is able to become himself in the deepest way. Adam and Chava together in Bereshis are called Adam. Adam. And as the Zohar says, because they're two halves of one Metzias, Plagufa. So that means that without the other, without that connector, you're not going to find yourself. But when marriage began to be defined as restricting, and you have to be free to do your own thing, and the whole thing during the 60s, and then moving into the 70s, and all of that, and all of this was Tachas HaDegel, under the flag, the banner of democracy. So now marriage is either something which is terrible, or if you are in a marriage, for whatever reason, you're in a marriage, so then it should be an open marriage, without grulim. Without grulim. And even though from people who are sincere and trying to do their best to keep everything the right way, and the marriage is a marriage which has tchumim and gulim, but a person has to recognize within himself that when you're flirting with somebody in the office, you're playing the same game. It's the same game. So you're not going to go, God forbid, to do something with the person, although that has happened many times with people who didn't think they would go there. But it's the same thing. You're uncomfortable with this boundary that sets you apart from this nice lady in the office that just happens to be, 20 years younger than your wife and hasn't had any kids yet. She still has her figure. Sorry to talk in a pressed way. So you're in the office. It's a little bit of you don't chalila say anything bad. You don't go to sit with her in a bar or somewhere. Spielzach. The border is not strong. The borders are not strong. I know people who for the sake of teaching Torah, they were not careful of those borders, and they'll be sitting there with some person that they're trying to be makarev, on a Friday night at 1:30 in the morning. His wife already went to sleep 4 hours ago, and he's sitting there with his student and talking about Torah. What could be a greater ideal than teaching Torah to another Jew? But you're a male and she's a female, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning. What are you doing sitting here talking to somebody about Torah at 1 o'clock in the morning when it's not your gender? I know you're not supposed to say that. What are you doing here at 1 o'clock in the morning? And I've had friends of mine, people that I know that are good people, that their lives got messed up, and so did other people's lives from this kind of a breaking down of borders. So Hashem Zebach knows what's the right border. And to people from the outside, they look like they're very, very extreme. Like all the halachas of Nida, all the restrictions of Nida, all the harchokas that we have from the Chachamim, even between a husband and wife, where there a person would say the following: I don't want an open marriage. I'm happy having a closed marriage. But the kolapachis, in my marriage, can't I have an open marriage? No? I have to keep all these laws because I can't pass the keys to my wife. I got to put them on the table. So I got married. You told me to get married. I got married. So in this marriage, I don't want to go talk to anybody else. I'm happy with my wife. Everything's fine. I can't hand her the keys. I got to put them on the table. What kind of a thing is that? See, my marriage isn't open. So there are all kinds of subtle and less subtle ways that even people who are Shem mitzvahs play games. And the Chachamim knew, the Banishal knows, and the Chacham knew exactly what the borders need to be. Davka in order that marriage should be a real marriage. And Davka that the husband and wife in their marriage should be able to live a life of atzmius, of pnimius. That yes, there's a certain time of the month, put the keys on the table. Yeah. Or the baby on the table. I mean, make sure the kid doesn't fall down. Yeah, there's a time. Yeah. What? No, all this is the same svar. When they asked my Rabbi Yoshe Bez, about the whole Indian, because there was so much fighting going on at that time when there was still such a thing as conservative Judaism. There's not really such thing. But when there was such a thing as conservative, I don't think the rabbis are going to be upset that I said that from them. I don't mean them any harm, but it's not really a movement anymore. But in the 50s and the 60s, there was a big movement, the conservative movement, and so they were tumbling all over about mixed seating. I remember that. I remember they were tumbling about that, and even by certain modern shuls that they should have only that there shouldn't be a mechitza, there should only be a little mechitza. There are some shuls here, even in the neighborhood, that over the years the mechitzas have gotten higher, and those who are a little bit older remember when there was wasn't really a mechitza. So okay, Baruch Hashem, things have gotten better, but Rabbi Yoshe So Rabbi Yoshe spoke about it, and one of the things he said was that listen to this, the way Rabbi Yoshe ties it up is he said that the Indian of sitting next to your wife, or I guess your girlfriend, whatever, sitting next to your wife in shul, next to your husband in shul, he said, leaving aside the whole issue of tznius, right? Let's leave that aside. We'll leave that aside. Rabbi Yoshe said that you have a few minutes in your life when you're able to sit in the presence of a Kodesh Baruch and to try to come to that part of yourself in Pnimis of who you are vis-a-vis who he is. And the nature of a person, Rabbi Yoshe said, is that when you have your spouse next to you, that's somebody that you're always relying upon. And that's somebody that you're obviously very connected to. So you don't have even that moment in shul to be in a place of yourself, which is hard enough to daven b'tzibur, right? Okay, there's a reason for that too. Why Hashem wants at least the men to daven b'tzibur. The women don't have to daven b'tzibur, but the men should daven b'tzibur, to daven with a minyan, and how that works. And why is that, to be with other people when you're davening? That's a whole other conversation. But Rabbi Yoshe said, leaving aside the whole issue of tznius, to be able to face HaKadosh Baruch Hu as yourself. So even in the world of Torah mitzvahs, it's very, very, very easy to misunderstand the boundaries that Hashem has placed upon us. That Hashem and the Dvar Hashem that comes to us through the Torah Shebal Peh, through the Chacham, and all of the restrictions of Torah Shebal Peh. Every single gather that the Chacham made was in order to give us the freedom to be ourselves. Just the opposite of how they look. They all look like a person wants to. He had a hamburger. Now now he wants to have a milkshake. No. So you have all these people that they're trying to find the Ayekah Shiur, right? To see how they can cut down in the 6 hours. So I remember one of my kids once came back from someone said, "No, Daddy, my friend." They were little. So my friend said that he keeps. Wasn't he? It was a she. She was saying that my friend says that in her house they wait 3 hours between meat and milk. So why do we have to wait 6 hours?
Belgium is 1 hour.
Yeah. So for the child, this is torture. I want to have my pizza. I want to have my milkshake, and here's Paro telling me I can't have it. I can't have my milkshake. How come by the other one it's 3 hours or an hour? How come there's such a thing by me? And so it is. For that Jew that has that Masorah and comes from that place where it's legitimate, that's something which is not hampering his freedom. But if you're from a regular place or a different place where 6 hours is the halacha, so then it means that if you're not entering into the sixth, you ever hear that? Mm-hmm. In the 6th hour, 9 months. I remember hearing that when I was a kid also. That You're in the 6th hour. That means 5 hours and a second. You're in the 6th hour. The twilight zone. Between 5 and 6. Where you can have the milkshake but not enjoy it so much. To wait an extra few minutes. We all play. There's all different kinds of games that the person plays with Hashem Yisbarach's Gevulim, the Tchumim that Hashem Yisbarach made. And when he gave the Torah, and he Hagbilas Hahar, Hagbilas to make a boundary, a border. Because the only way you can come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is when there are borders. And that's what he was saying. You want to run up the mountain. Even in Kedusha, everything has to be in the right way. Everything has to be at the right time in the right way, according to who you are. And right now in your life, you shouldn't be going around with payas to the floor and a garter around your neck or something. That's not who you are right now. And many of the chevra that they try to do these things when they're not ready for it, and it's not really themselves. They haven't found that point inside of themselves. Even though it looks like it's very, very sweet, but in the end, it oftentimes works against them. And you have that by some of the chevra that they became very firm very fast. And it doesn't always lead to what they were hoping it would lead to. If the tachlis, because there you would say, what do you mean? I want to be free to be able to keep Yiddishkeit the way that I want. But it's here too. It's the way that you want. It's not necessarily the way that you should right now in your life. Yiddishkeit could also be a taiva in a certain way. Because this looks like it's exciting. There's a Svardi I'm very close to who I love, and over the years, every like 7 or 8 years, he would say, "Is it okay if I put on a shtreimel?" I said, I always tell him, "No." 7 years later, maybe he feels shmita, maybe it's another shmita. How about now? Can I wear a shtreimel? I said, "No." What are you putting on a shtreimel? What do you have to do with a shtreimel? With a couple of Jews from Galicia and Poland, what does it have to do with you? You're from Morocco, from Syria, wherever. What do you do? What does that have to do with you? Well, the shtreimel, that's not going to bring out the atzmius of who you are. The Sephardi is a different shirish. They're Yidden, and we're Yidden, but they're Shirashim that have different definition of a Sephardi and Ashkenazi. There are two bechinas of a Sephardi, and even among the Sephardi, among the Ashkenazi, the different bechinas of a person. And the tachlis is to come to your atzmius, not because it looks nice and it gives me a feeling of Shabbos. It's very, very nice, but not for you. So even within the world of Avodas Hashem, there have to be tchumim and gulim in order to be able to not lose that sense of your own identity. You have to be very, very careful. You lose your identity even while feeling that you're free to find something that's holy, that's holier, that's better. It's better for the other person, doesn't mean it's better for you. And even for that other person, it's only at the right time, in the right way. So this is something that's part of our lives that's all the time. Right? Mr. Hashem will continue. Shabbos will be Kodesh.